Hi again, Mark here from Talkingbass.net. This week I'm going to be giving you a little rundown on all of the reasons every bass player should have at least a basic understanding of chord tones and how they're applied to bass lines. So first of all, what are chord tones? Well, as the name suggests, they're simply the notes of a chord. You might also know them by the term arpeggio. An arpeggio is an ordered collection of chord tones. So the term chord tone is referring to the individual notes. Arpeggio refers to the ordering of them. As an example, here's a basic C major triad. So I'm playing that as a block chord. We have the notes C, E and G. So those notes are the individual chord tones. C is a chord tone, E is a chord tone and G is a chord tone. But if I play them in order one note at a time, that's an arpeggio. So now we've got the definitions out of the way, why are those chord tones so important? Well, in general Western music, the majority of music that we play is made of chord progressions. Whether the chords are played or implied through a melody, it doesn't matter. Even if the tune only has one chord, the harmony is the harmony. All pieces of music have a harmonic background, just like the background of a painting. And everything that we play or write in a bass line or a melody is dictated by that background in some way. Are you ever in a situation where you have to create a bass line from a basic chord chart for a song? If so, what do you do? Well, the first and safest thing that most players do is go for the root notes. So simply play the root notes of each chord and that's it. So for a C major chord, you play a C, for a G major chord, you play a G, etc. And that's fine. But have you ever wondered how you could add some more notes into the mix? Or maybe weave a melodic line through some chords. Or if you wanted to be a jazz or blues player, I'm sure you've wondered how you can develop walking bass lines through the chords. Well, this is where chord tones are your friend. So here's a simple chord progression in the key of C major. We have C major 7 for 2 bars, A minor 7 for 2 bars, D minor 7 for 2 bars, and then G7 for 2 bars. And I'm just going to create a simple bass line with a backing track, just sticking to those root notes, just like I suggested, okay? So let's see what we come up with. Okay. So that worked okay, that will be absolutely fine in a band setting, but why did those notes work? Well, one reason would be that we're reinforcing and outlining the chord progression. That's pretty much our functional role as a bass player. But beyond that, it's because we're playing the notes that are already there in the chord. When we play the notes that are already in there, they rub up nicely, they're blending nicely, they're consonant, they're not dissonant. So for consonance, if I play two G's together, G and a G, play them together, you can hear that's consonant, okay? Now if I play a G and a G sharp together, that's dissonance, okay? So when we play the notes that are there in the chord, we're going to have a nice consonant sound. They're going to play nicely together. So over a C major chord, for instance, I could play the C, that'd play nicely with the C that's in there. We could play the E, that rubs up nicely to the E that's already in there, and G, again, that rubs up nicely with the G that's already in there. We're simply playing the notes that are in there in the chord. So as an example, I'm just going to work through that chord progression again, but this time I'm going to expand a little on the line by introducing some more chord tones. So instead of just playing the root notes, I'm going to bring the 3rd, the 5th and the 7th into play, okay? So that line was a lot more interesting and it really helped to outline the chords that are in there, because if we just stick to the root notes, yes, you can hear the root movement, but by including the arpeggios, can actually hear the quality of the chords in there. We're outlining the chords a lot better. So the line also worked because of the consonants. Now that's not to say that we only want consonant notes in music. Not at all. If we only played chord tones over every chord, everything would become a little bland. The spice and excitement of music often comes from the dissonance and tension that we create, especially when we combine that with releasing that tension. And the key to understanding this is understanding how non-chord tones work. Once you've studied all the basic principles of chord construction and you know the notes of the chords that you're going to be playing with, you can then use the chord tones as a framework for your bass line and gradually integrate every other scale, degree and chromatic note into the line. As long as you work around that chord tone framework and understand how everything relates back to those notes of the chord, you can freely experiment and develop your own bass vocabulary with the entire chromatic scale. And this is something that can be pretty liberating when players first try doing it, and something usually clicks and it all makes sense. So here's another bass line over that chord progression, but this time I'm going to introduce some non-chord tones in there. So I'm going to introduce some scalar ideas and a few chromatic notes. So how do you go about learning all of this stuff? Well, there are three main things that you need to work on. Number one, learn the basics of chord construction and harmony. Learn how chords are built so that you can work out all the arpeggios and chord tones for any chord that you see. It might sound like a huge amount of study and work, but trust me, once you understand a few basic concepts like the stacking of thirds, it'll all make sense and your musicianship will get a huge boost. Number two, learn how to map those chord tones to the bass fingerboard. It's one thing learning how to create a dominant seventh chord in theory, but it's another thing learning the chord tones all over the neck. Again, this is something that might seem like a lot of initial work, but once you have a few common chords applied to the bass and you understand how to divide the neck into several manageable positions, you'll see giant improvements in your overall playing and freedom on the neck. Lastly, number three, you need to learn how to apply those individual chord tones into your bass lines. Learning the chord tones and even the positions all over the fretboard is fine, but if you can't make any music with them, well, you're just wasting your time. So you need to practice and experiment adding chord tones into your bass lines. You'll need to understand the progression that you're playing over and the style that you're playing in, and then you'll need to integrate them slowly, one at a time. Then you can add all the non-chord tones by using melodic devices like passing notes, neighbor notes and enclosures. But remember, it's still all from the framework of harmony. So, as some of you may know, the new Chord Tone Essentials course will be released over at Talkingbass on September the 8th. In that course, I'm going to be devoting a complete module to each of the three steps I've just outlined. You'll learn the chord construction principles for every chord that you're ever going to encounter. You'll then learn how to play the chord tones for each of those chords over the entire fingerboard, and then you'll learn how to apply each chord tone to your bass lines in a variety of styles, before adding all of the notes of the chromatic scale and then expanding into walking bass lines, fills and solos. It's a huge course and I'm really excited about it. So sign up for free to talkingbass.net to receive news on all the upcoming course and lesson releases. You'll also gain free membership to the site where you can find a ton of practice resources to help you create a great practice routine. So check it out and I'll see you later.